As per my last video, today I'm going to be teaching you how to turn your artwork and ideas into a full-fledged story. I did need footage for this entire video, so I'm going to be showing you the painting process of this month's stamp card. And if you're curious about what a stamp card is and why I'm painting one, then you can check out my stamp card video that's in the cards. But jumping straight in, first, you want to look at your artwork that you're trying to build a story out of. What is the subject of this artwork? Who are the characters in it, if there are any? And what is the overall mood of this? Analyzing your artwork before you start throwing ideas out there is going to kind of help you generate the right ideas. Now, once you have a solid brainstorm going, then you want to jump into plot. Now, before you start looking at individual scenes and visual symbolism, you want to kind of break plot into two main groups. First, you have big picture thinking, which would be the generalized aesthetics and the rough idea of where your story is going to be progressing to, versus the zoomed in lens that we'll look more into later. But for now, your big picture plot should be covering the three topics that are genre, setting, and conflict. Your genre is essentially the type of story that you're writing. Are you writing a romance? Is this going to be an action adventure? Your conflict is going to be the main problem that arises in your story that your characters have to resolve by the end of the story to some degree. And setting should just be a generalized idea. We're not really looking for a laundry list of literal locations that your characters will inhabit over the course of your entire story. We're looking for just a rough location. Is this New York City? Is this a suburbs? Some fantasy made-up location in a place that resembles medieval Europe. Once you have those things decided and figured out, next you want to start creating characters. You're going to have three main groups for characters. That would be your protagonist or main character, your antagonist or villain, or it could be some type of antagonistic conflicting force like a hurricane, and lastly, side character. All of these characters, except for the hurricane, are going to need a want, need, misbelief, and fear. The want refers to the thing that your character is going to literally be pursuing in the story. Their need is the thing that they need to pursue and achieve in order to resolve their internal conflict. Their misbelief is a false thinking or false narrative that they hold about themselves or the world. The fear is the thing that's holding them back from actually pursuing their need. All of these are separate of character traits that would kind of follow the same name. Like, fears aren't related to your character literally being afraid of something like spiders per se. These all come together to represent the layered internal conflict that your characters are going to be experiencing. If we were to look at this in Moana, her want would be to restore the heart of Tafiti, but her need would be to believe in herself not only as the ocean's chosen one, but also a capable wayfarer. Her misbelief is that if she doesn't have Maui or the ocean or her family, that she's not going to be able to find success or be a good leader. And her fear is that if she leans into her love for the ocean and her love of sailing, that she'll become a disappointment and a poor leader within her village. Now, all four of these pillars of internal conflict come together and they shape how your characters interact with the conflict of your entire story. And this also molds their character arcs that they'll be going through. So once your characters are sorted out, next you want to jump into everyone's favorite part, which is world building. Now, when most people say world building, they think of some high fantasy, intense action story like The Lord of the Rings or The Chronicles of Narnia. But world building is actually present in every kind of story, no matter what the genre. I like to look at world building in two separate categories: casual and contrived. Casual stories take place in the real world. You know, think a small town in Minnesota, whether it's an actual town on the map or one that you just made up. Now, rather than giving your audience a in-depth, thorough history lesson of this random town, when the town's only purpose is to serve as a backdrop for your coming-of-age story, it makes much more sense to, instead of doing all of that extra work, niche down on this specific reality. Is this town overprotective of children because maybe 20 years ago there was a huge wildfire and all of the kids were condensed in one area, and maybe that area burned down and all of the kids passed away? So now this is the first generation of kids in over 20 years, and now they're finally coming up to, adulthood. Or did a casino come into the town and now everyone's too focused on their own vices to actually pay attention to these kids, and the kids kind of have to figure out life for themselves? Think about what microcosm of the world that your story is going to inhabit. Now, conversely, for contrived worlds, the sky's essentially the limit. You are going to be exploring the bounds of reality and beyond. You can just start thinking of yourself as a pseudo-anthropologist. First, you want to see if your story would need some kind of map. If you have a rich, bountiful world and your story would be taking place across several different locations, then you might actually need a map, because that would help you better understand your world and your audience. Now, from that map, you want to start looking at environments. Are there any forests or desert close by any kind of settlement that humans or whatever life form, whether it be alien or whatever, would be existing? Now, from those environments and the humans or whatever life forms, let's just say humans going forward. So the relationship between environment and the human creates culture. If the settlement was near a desert, then they're going to find water to be a commodity and they're going to value it more than anything else. They might have festivals for celebrating rain, and festivals like that could even carry into the modern day. While they may not be celebrating because rain came, because they'll probably have some type of infrastructure to have proper aqueducts and water retention, traditions usually hold weight. Now, these same cultures and traditions usually morph into the different social systems and hierarchies that take place within a society. In that same desert settlement, someone who's able to find water very easily and very consistently is going to typically be valued more than other people who can't in that same society. Then the environment, culture, and social systems usually bridge the gap and start to formulate some type of belief system. This can be polytheist or monotheist or no belief system at all, and the choice is pretty much up to you. But belief systems usually show what a society values the most. If this is a more philosophical based belief system, they have most likely reached their needs and want, food, shelter, excess food for hard times and whatnot, and now they're kind of reflecting more so on the grand scheme of human interaction. But in other cases, this may be a more literal belief system. Maybe in that same desert society, rain is idolized, or storm clouds become idolized due to their importance and rarity. Then all of these things come together and start forming a government body. This doesn't necessarily have to be a traditional democratic government. This could be as simple as establishing someone as leader and someone else as a supporting leader. But the environment, the culture, the already established social norms and social systems, alongside any kind of belief system, are all going to mold law and governing force. In that same desert society, if water collection is extremely important, they may mandate that everyone aid in water collection during the appointed time. You can really dive deep into these 5 different topics and how they all interconnect and intermingle with one another. Before we move forward, you also want to consider magic systems, which, despite the name, isn't actually always about magic. It's realistically any kind of system or power that is utilized by characters and has some form of rules and regulations around. If we look at a character like Gandalf the Grey, he literally has magic, and there are rules around his magic and the uses of such. Another magic system would be the Pokemon typing system and Pokemon battles in general. While this isn't magic per se, this is some type of superpowered ability that these Pokemon, these animal-like Pokemon, are able to use. It still falls under the bounds and guidelines of what a magic system is. Now, within these two examples, Gandalf is more of a soft magic system because his power levels aren't explicitly stated and there's not really too hard of rules on him. We just have an understanding that he's not going to be utilizing the same magic as someone like Sauron. Whereas for Pokemon is an example of a hard magic system. There are rules around typing and what Pokemon can do what, equating to much stricter regulations around what the audience can expect when interacting with some type of Pokemon story. For example, you wouldn't expect a Charizard to be able to learn Water Gun, and you wouldn't expect Pikachu to randomly take on a flying typing. If you do have a magic system, make sure to go back into your exploration on environments, cultures, social systems, belief systems, and government to further integrate that magic system into your overall story world. Next, we're going to be jumping into the aforementioned zoom-in portion of the plot. Here we're going to be looking at scenes and individual moments and settings within the story. Now, before diving into any kind of scene creation, do keep in mind, not all the time are your scenes going to be created in a chronological order. Meaning, if you were writing a story about Spider-Man, you might have an idea for the middle of the story where he's confronting the Green Goblin. Then you'll have an idea for him leaving school in the morning on the day that he's bitten by the spider. Then you might have an idea about the very last scene of the entire story. This flow chart still works, this pattern. And in fact, it's probably the most common way to write. So don't be alarmed if you don't feel like you can write it sequentially. Now, as far as scene development, you want to look at setups and payoffs. This idea refers to setting something up or establishing something in one scene, and either within that same scene, the next scene, or some other later scene, paying it off, giving your audience the end result that they were looking for with whatever you said. Keeping with the Spider-Man example, if we have scene after scene of him training and beating up bad guys and throwing random burglars in jail, when he finally does face off against a formidable opponent like Dr. Octopus or the Green Goblin, we need to be able to see that character growth. If he's just fumbling about and not really knowing how to do anything, as if this is the very first day he's ever gotten his powers, then that's not a proper payoff. Now, one of the best tools that you have at your disposal for deciding what scenes to keep and what scenes to get rid of, or when to develop scenes, you want to look at pacing, which is basically like how quickly you're reaching all of the important points of a story. If we're to look at Spider-Man as an example again, having him have a really long conversation with Aunt May and then help some old lady across the street and then go and buy groceries for one of his elderly neighbors. All of that just to show that he's a compassionate individual before he becomes Spider-Man, and then show him doing the same things after he becomes Spider-Man, just to prove that Peter Parker himself is compassionate. That's utilizing a lot of space, whether that be screen time or page real estate, when the same thing could be conveyed in several other more concise manners. We could show Peter rushing out the door for school, and maybe he tells Aunt May, hey, just remember I picked up the dry cleaning and it's in the coat closet over there. And she says something like, oh, you shouldn't have, you really didn't have to, I was going to pick it up anyway. And then he rushes out the door. Maybe he grabs an apple out of his lunchbox and throws it to some little girl who looks sad. And then maybe as Spider-Man, we see him have a moment in the middle of a fight and he's able to just dodge maybe some type of pipe or something that's being thrown at him. But rather than just dodging it and letting it, I don't know, hit a random pigeon, maybe the pigeon's lost a leg or something, he uses his web blasters to grab the pigeon and let it fly off, and then goes back to fighting. Both of those scenes would further connect and establish, without utilizing too much time or space, that Peter Parker, both as Peter and Spider-Man, is compassionate. Next, we want to look at dialogue, which is one of the trickiest, most problematic part for a beginning writer. But if I was to break it down into its two most important parts, I would say subtext. A great instance of subtext would be this scene out of Ocean's 11. Here, Julia Roberts' character is telling her ex-husband, boyfriend, fiance, whoever he was, we're just gonna say ex-husband, George Clooney, that essentially the reason why their relationship failed is because these poor character traits about him he does not see a problem with, and he doesn't see a problem with it because he has surrounded himself in an echo chamber of people who think and act just like him. So it's now become his normal, but it is not normal whatsoever. And it's these character traits that he still sees no problem with that are the reason why she feels as though he can't respect her new relationship with Terry. Now, George Clooney's character is basically saying there's nothing to respect because he can never make you as happy as I made you. Essentially, your high points will never be as high as they were with me. And Julia Roberts' character is countering and saying, yes, that may be true, but my low points are never going to be as low as they were with you. And how relevant are the high points if they're constantly being overshadowed by the low point? Dialogue within a story could literally say everything that I just said, but it is much more interesting and entertaining when it is condensed into really quick, snappy subtext. And there's just something about it. It's just like a little snack for your ears. It's just better. Now, on the other hand, exposition is essentially any kind of information or necessary knowledge that characters are either exchanging with each other or that the audience needs to know. And a perfect use case of properly hiding exposition, because you don't want to just give an info dump, would be the DNA animation scene in Jurassic Park. In the prior scenes, they established these adult scientists as almost being children and just wandering through this immense park and just exploring with this childlike curiosity all the different dinosaurs and plants. So now they've come into some type of pseudo, almost Universal Studios like theme park ride that is educational, and it's actually meant for the children that would be coming into the park. But the adults are riding it, and they're getting information on how the mosquitoes bit dinosaurs and then were encased in amber, and how the Jurassic Park scientists are now drilling into the amber to extract the DNA from the blood inside of the mosquitoes to eventually create the dinosaurs. This could have easily been some type of scientist from the research team coming in and bumbling through a bunch of cards about DNA and cell replication and whatnot, but the writers understood that the children that would be coming to this park, which is what this park was built for, alongside the audience, probably would not understand all of that information, so they gave a little animation in layman terms of the entire process. And not only that, the writers set this up so that the audience is learning this information right alongside the characters. So now when we get to the dinner table scene, everyone is on the same page. At this point, you've essentially created your entire story, but instead of leaving it where it is, if you want to craft a very interesting, very rich, and nuanced story, now you want to find your theme question. You don't just pull theme out of thin air. You want to look at your story and see what is the overall journey or exploration within the story. In a movie like Sicario, the theme question would be something like, how far can justice be stretched before it becomes corruption? And within the film, the characters, plot, and world all pretty much revolve around that thematic question. So once you find your theme, you want to go over your story and kind of pinch and reshape different areas so that it better suits the theme. You don't want to give a buzz cut to your entire story. You're just looking to trim a little bit and add a little bit. From here, you want to condense any documents or idea dumps or any other kind of notes pages into a solid outline where you can see your character's day-to-day, the inciting incident, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. Then also the individual scenes in between all of those different major points within the plot. When your outline is done, you want to step away for 1 month and then edit and begin your first draft. If you found this helpful but would like a more in-depth exploration of all of these topics and some of the other more important topics, such as scene tone and specific character arcs, then you should check out my beginner's guide called The Artist's Guide to Writing. It's $35 off on sale this month. If you would prefer to try it out and see if you like it before committing to purchasing it, then you can check out the free sample. And if this video has inspired you to start writing consistently and you're looking for a way to stay organized that's also fun, then check out my gamified Notion template. All three will be linked below in the description box. And tune in next Monday where I will be going over writing habits for artists. Thanks again for watching. Bye!